Tommy Robinson's London rally exposed the protest double standard Britain can no longer ignore. London's rally Showdown revealed the truth Britain's establishment does not want to face. Central London became the stage for a brutal political split. Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom rallies on one side, a pro-Palestinian Nakba Day march, and an anti-Robinson counter-mobilisation on the other. The policing operation was enormous, with around 4,000 officers deployed, live facial recognition, drones, dogs, helicopters, armoured vehicles, and strict protest conditions used to manage the day. That alone shows the story was not fringe. A politically irrelevant protest does not trigger one of the largest public order operations in London. The uncomfortable point is that the Unite the Kingdom rally pulled a serious crowd, spoke to real public frustration, and forced Westminster to confront an issue it prefers to compress into one word: extremism. The early estimate for the Robinson-led rally was around 60,000 people. Estimates for the pro-Palestinian Nakba Day march varied, with police media estimates around 15,000 to 20,000 in some reports, while organisers claimed dramatically higher numbers. The final arrest figure reported after the day was 43, with 20 linked to Unite the Kingdom, 12 linked to the pro-Palestinian march, and others either unaffiliated or not clearly assigned. That is where the real tension begins, not because every person at the Robinson rally was moderate, not because every slogan was defensible, but because the branding of the day was never neutral. The crowd too big to dismiss. The attendance war matters because numbers are now political weapons. Supporters want to claim a historic national uprising. Opponents want to reduce the rally to a few furious extremists. Neither framing survives contact with the known evidence. The more defensible figure is around 60,000 for Unite the Kingdom, significantly below the previous major Robinson-linked rally in September 2025, which police estimates placed at around 150,000. That drop matters. It suggests that the movement did not repeat its peak mobilisation, but 60,000 people in central London is still a major political event, not a sideshow. Crowd numbers are inaccurate for obvious reasons. There are no turnstiles on a march. People arrive late, leave early, move between streets, gather around stages, cluster at transport hubs, and appear larger or smaller depending on camera angle. Organisers inflate because scale equals legitimacy. Opponents deflate because scale equals threat. Police estimates can also be cautious because they are operational, not promotional. That is why the honest position is simple. The rally was not millions, but it was something. It was a large, patriotic and nationalist street mobilisation in the capital, and pretending otherwise only feeds the suspicion that parts of the mainstream system are more interested in narrative management than in public understanding. The media did cover it, but not with the curiosity it deserved. The claim that mainstream media did not cover it needs a sharper version. The event was covered. The real complaint is that many supporters feel it was not covered with the same intensity, curiosity or seriousness that would be applied to other mass protests. That perception has force, because the dominant framing often arrives before the viewer hears the message. Far right becomes the lead label. Anti-immigration becomes the shorthand. Tommy Robinson rally becomes the containment device. The people attending are then filtered through the reputation of the organizer, rather than explored as a mass expression of public anxiety about immigration, free speech, policing, national identity, grooming gangs, cultural change and political trust. That does not mean the label came from nowhere. Police had already warned that previous Unite the Kingdom events had involved anti-Muslim chanting, racially or religiously aggravated offences, and violence at the September rally, when protesters attacked officers and attempted to reach opposing groups. The Met also said Muslim Londoners and ethnic minority communities had reported fear around these events. But the media problem is asymmetry. When a right-coded protest contains extremists, the whole event often inherits the stain. When a left-coded or pro-Palestinian protest contains extremist slogans anti-Semitic intimidation or support for banned organizations, the language often becomes more careful, more contextual and more protective of the wider crowd. That double standard is precisely why trust collapses. The state treated the rally like a threat before it treated it like a message. The most revealing part of the day was not the size of the crowd. It was the posture of the state. Around 4,000 officers were deployed with live facial recognition. Helicopters, drones, dogs, horses, armoured vehicles and strict protest conditions used across central London. That is not ordinary crowd management. That is a security state posture aimed at a domestic political gathering. Supporters will reasonably ask why police used such visible force against a patriotic protest demanding stronger borders, freer speech, and political accountability. Police cite public safety, separation of rival groups, previous violence, the FA Cup final, and outstanding suspects from earlier disorders as the answer. Those concerns are not fictional, but the optics still matter. When the machinery of the state appears to treat one political tribe as a pre-crime population, distrust does not shrink, it hardens. The facial recognition decision was especially disturbing. Live facial recognition was used for the first time in a policing operation around a protest, with cameras placed in Camden, not on the Unite, the Kingdom route itself, but in an area police expected many attendees to use. That crosses a major civil liberties line. People attending a lawful political protest should not feel they are walking through a biometric checkpoint. A country that values free speech cannot quietly normalize protest surveillance simply because the protest is unfashionable. If the same technology were deployed at another mass political demonstration, civil liberties campaigners will justifiably raise concerns. The principle is simple. The state should police criminal behavior, not monitor political attendance. The policing optics fed the two-tier argument. The rally also exposed a more profound problem in how protest policing now looks to the public. When officers are deployed in huge numbers, when surveillance technology is aimed at a lawful political gathering, and when the most visible state response is containment rather than listening, the two-tier policing argument writes itself. We should handle another sensitive point carefully and not ignore it. Some rally supporters noticed the optics of minority background officers being placed in highly charged protest environments where anger was directed at the police and at the wider state. There is no public evidence that the Met deliberately used minority officers as political shields, and it would be wrong to attack officers personally because of their race or background. But the operational optics still matter. When police leadership sends officers into a febrile crowd while the institution itself is accused of ideological bias, the people at the top carry responsibility for how that looks and what risk it creates. Critics should aim their criticism upward, not sideways. Individual officers, including minority officers, were doing the job assigned to them. The more serious question is whether senior policing decisions created a theatre of suspicion that made confrontation more likely, and then used the atmosphere of confrontation to justify even heavier policing. A lawful protest should not be turned into a managed suspicion zone. Officers should not be put in a position where political anger at senior policing decisions is personalized against them on the streets. And biometric surveillance should not become routine just because the crowd is politically inconvenient. The rival protest was given a softer moral frame. The same day also included the Nakba Day protest, which was organized around Palestinian displacement and joined by anti-racist groups opposing Robinson's march. Its stated cause was Palestinian suffering and opposition to Israel's conduct. Many people attending will have been motivated by sincere humanitarian concern. That should be acknowledged, but the same standard has to apply. Police had previously warned that pro-Palestine demonstrations had led to arrests for racially and religiously aggravated public order offenses, stirring up racial hatred and support for prescribed organizations. On the day itself, final arrest reporting included arrests linked to the Nakba protest, including one reportedly connected to support for a proscribed organization. That is why the moral asymmetry is so glaring. If one rally is defined by its worst slogans, then the other must be judged by the same rule. If one crowd is collectively stained by extremist elements, the other cannot constantly rely on context to rescue it. If patriotic anger is treated as inherently dangerous, then revolutionary, anti-Israel or Islamist-adjacent rhetoric cannot be softened into activism by default. The issue is not that the Robinson rally should escape criticism. It should not. The issue is that Britain's institutions appear far more comfortable pathologizing one side's anger than the other's. Why the far-right label now looks like a political weapon. The far-right label has meaning. Tommy Robinson's history, the English Defence League legacy, anti-Islam activism around his movement, and the presence of harder ideological elements mean critics have reasons for concern. Police also cited previous incidents involving anti-Muslim chanting, racially or religiously aggravated offences and violence toward officers at earlier Unite the UK events. But that is not the same as saying every person at the rally was far-right. That distinction matters. A father worried about immigration is not automatically an extremist. A woman furious about grooming gangs is not automatically a fascist. A veteran waving a union flag is not automatically a danger to democracy. A working-class voter who thinks political leaders have ignored border control, social cohesion and public safety may be reasonable. The branding becomes dishonest when it collapses legitimate national concern into extremism. It allows institutions to avoid the harder question. Why are so many people angry enough to gather behind a man the establishment has spent years trying to make untouchable? The answer is not simply racism. It is distrust. It is the belief that mainstream politics has ignored immigration, softened language around Islamist extremism, over-policed some groups, under-policed others, and punished ordinary citizens for saying what they can see. That does not excuse genuine hatred. It separates the issue from a legitimate grievance. A serious media class would be capable of making that distinction. Too often it chooses not to. Elon Musk's shadow still hung over the movement. Elon Musk did not need to stand physically on the stage for his influence to matter. His previous video address to a Robinson-linked Unite the Kingdom rally in September 2025 became a major moment and helped to globalize the movement's message. Reporting around the May 2026 rally also noted that Musk amplified misleading attendance claims online. That matters, because Musk gives this movement something rare: global amplification. When one of the world's most powerful technology figures engages with British protest politics, the event stops being only domestic. It becomes part of a wider transatlantic backlash against migration, censorship, political correctness, policing, elite media, and institutional trust. For supporters, Musk's attention feels like validation. For critics, it looks like foreign billionaire interference. For everyone else, it shows how British street politics now operates inside a global algorithmic arena where X posts, live streams, clips, and crowd shots shape reality faster than official statements do. That is one reason attendance claims become so explosive. A wide-angle crowd clip can travel further than a police estimate. A viral post can make a rally feel larger than it was. A hostile crop can make the same rally look irrelevant. In the new protest economy, perception is not a byproduct. It is the battlefield. The rally's core message was crude, but not crazy. The central message of the rally was not difficult to understand. Britain is changing too quickly. Immigration is too high. Political leaders are not listening. Free speech is being narrowed. And ordinary citizens feel morally blackmailed whenever they object. That message is blunt. At times, it can become ugly. But at its core, it is not irrational. A country is allowed to care about borders. People are allowed to care about national identity. Citizens are allowed to question whether integration has worked. Voters are allowed to say the political class has imported social pressure, housing pressure, public service pressure, and cultural pressure while demanding applause for its compassion. The danger comes when legitimate frustration curdles into blanket hostility toward Muslims, migrants, or ethnic minorities. That line must be held, but the line cannot be held by pretending the original frustration is fake. Suppressed public anger does not disappear. It goes looking for louder leaders. That is the failure of the mainstream. By treating every difficult conversation about immigration and identity as morally contaminated, it created space for street politics to become the only place many people feel the subject is spoken plainly. The real scandal is the collapse of trust. The most significant story is not whether Tommy Robinson is popular enough to reshape Britain on his own. He is not. The bigger story is that tens of thousands of people are willing to stand behind a brand so toxic to the establishment because they believe the establishment is lying to them. They believe immigration is being mismanaged. They believe crime and security are discussed selectively. They believe speech rules are enforced unevenly. They believe some communities are protected from criticism, while others are freely mocked. They believe protests are judged not by conduct, but by political tribe. That belief cannot be defeated by shouting far-right louder. If anything, the label now often works as recruitment fuel. It allows supporters to say, "Look, they are not answering us. They are branding us. They are not debating the issue. They are delegitimizing the people. They are not covering the rally properly. They are managing public perception." That is why the mainstream response feels so inadequate. It keeps treating the rally as a contamination event when it is also a symptom event. The real extremism is the refusal to listen. The most dangerous mistake now would be to pretend the rally was only about Tommy Robinson. It was not. Robinson was the vehicle. The fuel was distrust. Tens of thousands of people did not enter central London because they all share the same ideology. They came because they believe the state does not hear them. The media does not represent them, and the political class uses language like far right to avoid admitting that Britain's social contract is under pressure. That does not make every chant acceptable. It does not make every speaker wise. It does not make every supporter innocent of prejudice. But it does mean the rally cannot be dismissed as a national embarrassment and filed away under extremism. The state's response made the problem worse. Heavy police deployment, live facial recognition, visible containment tactics, and selective moral language all fed the central grievance. That ordinary patriotic dissent is treated as a threat before it is treated as speech. Britain does not need to romanticize the rally. It needs to understand why it happened. Because if the answer to 60,000 people on the streets is surveillance, branding, and dismissal, the next rally will not be smaller because people were persuaded. It will be bigger because they were ignored.